problem I'm trying to solve is supporting kind of a more broad, more public form of education in which kind of the walls or the boundaries of a university melt away so that university students and local communities, local partners can all work together to promote both social change and educational progress and impact. My original inspiration for this project probably stems from the way that I grew up in a multicultural background where being parts of different circles, different groups seemed natural. And so then in grad school, when I realized that perhaps electrical engineering wasn't for me, but that supporting engineering growth within a broad public could be a part of my work. And so from there, I sought ways to shift my career into the engineering education research. What would I change about the world? Probably in a mindset in which everyone understood that they could give and take to education and society in meaningful ways, and that they would know how and have access to making contributions and receiving educational and social benefit, leaning on the kind of the breadth of expertise from within the university, as well as the reputational power as a community that The Ohio State University carries in this city really helps to open doors and make this work more possible.
Please welcome Dr. David Delaine, Assistant Professor, Department of Engineering Education.
So, you never think you're going to become that person who starts a talk with their child, but here we are. I used to have pictures of my car in my presentation, but things change. Last Saturday, my little boy and I, we visit a garden. We have a great time there. He has the opportunity to put on his big boots, and we play, we pull weeds, we plant things, we eat. And most importantly, we get dirty. We're never alone in the garden. There's always a bunch of people there, great energy, people from different backgrounds, people from different social circles. The garden, the Charles Madison Neighborhood Memorial Garden, is a public space. It's a community garden. Here, we work together to promote positive social change through community engagement. So I'm here with you today to share three main ideas. We're going to reflect on the public land-grant roots of The Ohio State University. We're going to highlight how community engagement provides a pathway towards achieving the mission set forth by the Land-Grant Act. And we're going to discuss the ways that our university is advancing excellence in community engagement through highlighting the work of myself and others. So let's start with the question, what is public education? We could each reflect on that a little bit. I might ask that you step away from this event thinking on that and taking it with you as you do your important work. And so historically, in the US, public education comes out of an idea that an engaged citizenship can support a healthy and successful democracy. So essentially, it was important to educate all citizens so that they could make important and positive decisions about the social and cultural climate, important issues of the day. They could vote responsibly and informed. They could be civic and engaged people in society to build the country that we needed. They could resist tyranny and protect our freedoms. So education and an educated public was a necessity. Based on that, we have a responsibility to be sure that we are educating all. Further, it was noted that character, virtue, were things that could be taught and things that were fostered by being in a meaningful educational environment, right? So therefore, we hold that responsibility, right? We also know that in times that we've been shown that democracy is a very fragile concept, right? And we don't have to reflect too far in our history to see what happens when democracy is challenged. So this takes us back to the emergence of The Ohio State University through the Morrill Land-Grant Act of 1862. And so we saw the land acknowledgement on the initial slide. And so in 1862, federal lands, some that were ceded from the tribal communities, were given to the states to either be sold or developed to produce public education, public higher education. And so the creation of these land-grant institutions shifted higher education from a place that was for elites to the farmers, to the workers, to the everyday people, greatly expanding educational access. However, though, the concept of what is public wasn't public for all. And so this is not a mistake, nothing did break. I left this slide intentionally black to represent the people who were not included in that initial definition of public. Right, we noted how land was taken from the tribal communities, from the Native Americans here, to establish the land-grant institutions. Further, at the time, an additional act had to be passed in the Confederate South to ensure that prior slaves and people of color could have access to higher education. This established the historically black college and universities, HBCUs. Moving forward, we know that Brown v. Board of Education was needed to desegregate high schools, to desegregate schooling. And if we even look today, if we were to compare the educational attainment of Columbus public city schools with those of the suburbs, we would see vast differences. So this points to the fact that the concept of publication must be alive, we must maintain it, and we must foster it. So let's think of what can the Ohio State University aspire to in order to advance the idea of what public education could be. I'm going to provide 3 ideas that the scholarship in this space presents. So we can lean on scholars, Paulo Freire from Brazil, W.B. Du Bois from the US, Ernest Boyer, great scholars who established the foundation of what community engagement could be. Our scholarship provides 3 opportunities for us. We can produce democratically engaged citizens who are prepared to contribute and act in a multicultural democracy and a globally interconnected world. We can promote transformational learning, so putting students in scenarios where they experience the world, where their interpretations of the world are questioned. So rather than just ingesting information blindly and repeating it, they can critique ideas that they're shared. And they can use those ideas after they critique and digest them to transfer them, to take meaningful action and provide positive outcomes to our society. Lastly, we can provide an education for all, making sure that the idea of public does reach every citizen, especially those who need it most and those who are marginalized by today's society. That takes us back home here to the Ohio State University. So what are we doing? How are we bringing these aspirations to life here at the university? Well, there are many scholars here, many students, many faculty and staff who embrace community engagement and perform it in a way that is reciprocal, that is authentic, that recognizes the assets that the community holds and foster those and contributes to those for meaningful outcomes. Let's start with medicine. Here we have Dr. Joshua Joseph, assistant professor in endocrinology, who partners with the African American Male Wellness Agency. And the agency, started in Ohio, seeks to provide positive outcomes for African Americans, focusing on first men and then women to support, started with the mission tightly around men and then has grown to include supporting women through financial health, physical health, parenting skills, and educational attainment. And so here on the bottom left, you see one of their main events, the African American Male Wellness Walk. And now here, thousands of people through Columbus and Ohio gather to walk this event. At the event, they screen thousands of people, or hundreds of people each event, and thousands of people over the years, and provide them feedback on their current physical well-being. Dr. Joshua Joseph was invited to collect data, analyze the data, and both publish and relay the results back to the community to inform ways that everyone can benefit on their health, and the programming performed by the African American Male Wellness Agency can be improved based on that feedback. Let's jump now to engineering, my disciplinary home. So in engineering, service learning efforts, service learning coursework has been used to teach engineering students that they can be active listeners like we were asked to do here today, to not arrive in a different country and say, hey, the engineers are here, we have the solution, but instead work to build partnerships, listen to the assets of the community, listen to the true needs of the community, and then work with them to turn those needs into real world outcomes. So one initiative here, led by Dr. Aditya Jayakumar, takes place in Ecuador, in the Mayan community, where this school was struggling with access to water. So in working with local companies down there, engineering students designed a solution locally and then contracted and traveled down there to support local contractors building the solution down there. This process took 3 years, where most of it was about fostering and building that relationship. Let's jump now here to another course. This one takes place in Guyana on the northeast coast of South America, where Dr. Kadri Paris and Dr. Jayakumar are 3 years into a relationship. They have not delivered a single engineering solution. Thus far, what they've been doing is meeting with the communities, building bridges, and trying to understand the local need. They're working with 2 communities, one Afro-Guyanese and one Amerindian, to ultimately seek to provide renewable energy solutions to provide power to local communities. And so here, these are 2 examples that highlight how it's not about showing up and delivering a solution, but really listening, working with communities, and building authentic partnership. This takes us back to the garden. Another great opportunity to show my little boy. I think he's super cute. And you're supposed to say, yeah, he is. But so I joke, right? I started with pointing to us, but this is not about us. We're lucky to benefit from being in the garden. Really, what we've been able to do is follow the lead of our wonderful community partners in the context, the Neighbor family. So this is Paula Neighbor and her 3 sons, Charles, Damon, and Evan. And they started the garden as a grieving process for the passing of their late father, Charles Madison Neighbor. He was a community activist and someone who taught his children that positive social impact is a part of life. And so they started a garden. One of my colleagues, Dr. Chris Ratcliffe, probably did this much better than I could. He volunteered in the garden for a year, unassumingly, listening, talking. Eventually, their conversations shifted towards a farming robot. The Neighbor family said, hey, you ever hear of these farming robots? We would love to have one of these in the garden. That idea really kind of highlighted the opportunity that we had here, us being from engineering education, them having this fruitful and meaningful social context. We collaborated on this together and installed a farming robot in the garden. This allowed us to leverage the history of this context. So the garden is located at a historic Black church here in Columbus, the Church of Christ of Apostolic Faith, located here on the east coast, on the east side of Columbus. In this context, it's food insecure. There isn't a supermarket anywhere near. There isn't access to healthy food. Anywhere that there's food insecurity means that there's scarcity of resources. That also means it's likely lacking educational resources as well. So we've recognized how the Black church could be a strong foundation, a pillar of the Black community, providing access that we could never gain as a university. Looking at how do we provide for food insecurity, right? Through our partnership, we bring many volunteer organizations like Nourish, which is a OSU food security organization designed for 90, the National Society of Black Engineers, organizations who now partner with us, go to the garden and volunteer. This has increased their ability to produce food. Additionally, we've started a STEM education camp. So we've created a free summer camp for youth in the community and youth who are congregants of the church. Ultimately, this work is on behalf of the community. Everything that we do is with love, with care, seeks to be culturally relevant, is on their terms for our community partners. This was just last Saturday. We were there working. These children just randomly came by the garden. They saw us weeding, they saw us working, so of course they pick up shovels, they ask how they can help. We took that opportunity to show them the farming robot. We moved it around, we showed them and taught them how robotics are real. Robotics have relevance to you. This is what STEM looks like in the real world. Helping them build ways and seeing themselves in STEM and engineering education. And so this brings us back here to The Ohio State University. And so we don't expect every student in Columbus to matriculate in the university and obtain a degree. But we do know that we have the power to touch each youth. And so The garden is only 5 miles away. If we were to think about all of the communities that are here within our reach, and if we were to mobilize and encourage and support more faculty to do this type of work, we could really have a lasting impact on Columbus, Ohio, the state, and beyond. And so, ultimately, we know that this university has roots in a land-grant institution, has roots in community engagement. And so perhaps we can consider the fact that we can foster the way that these works happen, and instead of leaning back and thinking that the extent to which this university is public is going to maintain itself, we could foster it, we could feed it, we could provide nutrients, and so the land-grant roots of this institution could blossom in and reach their full potential. Thank you.
That was great. Thank you, Dr. Delaine. You know, it's not lost on me what it takes to stand up in front of a room of people and give a presentation, not to mention a bunch of development and alumni relations and advancement professionals, so thank you. It's also not lost on me that doing a presentation when you have a 6-week-old baby in the house can be challenging. So that little boy now has a sibling, is that right?
Thanks for the coffee in the back.
Yes, they know I have to promise treats to get anyone in the room, so it's all good. Listen, you talked a lot about what I just love about your work, the various partners, internal to Ohio State and out in the community. That all sounds like tremendous opportunity. What are the barriers right now to your work moving forward? What would you say?
Great. So really, this work takes time. It's difficult, right? Fostering, developing, and maintaining a relationship probably falls, external to most of the work that students, faculty, and staff here at the university are responsible for. So the first part is that the dedication, the extra hours that it takes. Additionally, as faculty, as scholars, as experts, we're conditioned to believe that we're the ones with the answers. And so we tend to show up and deliver service rather than showing up and collaborating. And so that requires kind of a little bit of a shift in mentality of showing up and contributing rather than showing up and delivering the answer. Last is the resources. So the work that we've shown here across 3 or 4 years, I believe through philanthropic support, we've done what we've done with around $30,000 in funding. And so that doesn't account for all the countless hours of volunteers and just the effort that goes into maintaining the work. And so last is this work is often under-resourced.
You bet. Well, what would happen today if we gave you, say, $100,000? Would you have in your head exactly where you would put that money to use?
Yeah, I could spend that tomorrow.
Okay. How would you do it?
So one of the challenges, we obtain most of our money from the National Science Foundation and other research agencies. I have, and we do perform research on this work, but the research is almost at a different level. And a lot of this is practice. And so it's difficult for us to obtain funding from the National Science Foundation and then use it for programming. We can't pay community partners. We can't buy educational supplies. And so our summer camp and other activities is really kind of just pieced together by what we have access to. Really, an additional element is just kind of faculty support. I mentioned how this work is really a lot more than what we get paid for in our jobs here. Promotion and tenure is an extremely rigorous and competitive process. So most of us are focused on how do I produce high quality research. This work intersects with that, but it's also just parallel. So it really requires knowing how to navigate those two. With additional resources, we could encourage more faculty to kind of do this work in parallel to their research.
Yeah, no pun intended, but what you're looking for is seed funding, right? I mean, that's true. Just to seed takes resources, no question. Chris and I think it's Corinza who have microphones. Who has a question for Dr. Delaine? Anybody have any questions for him? He's so kind to be here. Yes, ma'am, in the center.
As advancement professionals, a large number of us in the room are often meeting face-to-face with people who have the proverbial seed funding. But often, too, those same people might want opportunities to fund that produce immediate results or have flashy outcomes or the opportunity to enable building, whatever it might be. But when research has shown extensively that a lot of the social change, be it mental, emotional, community, educational, health, whatever it might be, is truly derived from these small community initiatives where you have the opportunity to engage one-on-one, and often the results aren't seen for a full generation or at least several decades. What would you share as someone who's actively engaged in that work with the advancement professionals in this room to tell those people who might be looking for big opportunities? What might you say to them to maybe give them an opportunity to think differently about funding work like yours?
Sure, I love the question, and I love the way you articulated. Maybe you can write some grants on the side.
For a price.
Yeah, it's an excellent question and really difficult to answer. I think one of the main things is the feeling of the space, right? Those youth who showed up, right? I have another picture. One of the young women in the picture, her face has this strange smirk, this strange sense of wonder, and really you're all welcome to come visit. It's a special place. It's a feeling. I know that's not a good answer probably, but like you said, it's hard to quantify, and really I think that's why really talking about a paradigm shift in a culture, because if we can get more people to do this type of work. And I think one of the things that we could really further is the extent to which, the garden work is integrated with medicine, is integrated with sports, and the way that these things can be woven together across the university. That might provide for more of a substantial, visible impact. But really, it comes down to feeling and those one-on-one moments where it appears we've positively affected this young person, and now they know that perhaps, hey, the Ohio State University is maybe accessible for me, and look, STEM education has a place in my life. Those things are priceless, and if we can impact one or two children, right, for us, that's a huge win. If we all could impact one or two children, that changes what the Ohio State University is accomplishing.
It's interesting, you just, without probably knowing it, articulated when you were talking about interwoven the beginnings of a very big idea. So thank you so much. Pleasure to have you here today. We're very fortunate. Hand me the clicker.
Thank you.
After you, go ahead.